going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It, your movie podcast for reboots, remakes, sequels, requels, and anything else that has been squeezed out of a stone, like so much left over sweat and blood. As always, I'm your host, Blake, and with me is Terrence Tatum.
Hello, everyone.
And this week we are talking about, I Googled it just for this little intro, the 34th MCU movie, I want to say 13th. Am I doing that right? What was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14th X-Men movie, and third Deadpool movie, Deadpool and Wolverine, which I think is the first movie we've done that belongs to that many franchises.
Yeah.
Which is possible. Not since the Flintstones and the Jetsons crossed over and Nancy Reagan made that weird anti-drug cartoon with Michelangelo and other critters to help you fight drugs have there been so many characters crammed into a story. But here we are, after years, after Fox getting bought and everyone going, but what about Deadpool? Not what about the employees, but what about our fictional R-rated merc with a mouth? What will become of him? Will Marvel let it be R-rated? Will Marvel let him swear? Is it going to become a Disney-fied thing? And after however long that's been, we have our answer, and it's we're going to do it. It's fine. It can stay R. Everything's great. We're here. We somehow got Wolverine back. We pulled up that dump truck of money and said, one more ride. And by one more ride, we mean, do you want to do that? One more ride to the rest of the money. And then we will have here forever. Terrence, what did you think?
This is a fun ride. Like, these Deadpool movies are good. It's a weird thing with me with the Deadpool. I love Deadpool. You can't see it in my camera frame because it's a little higher up, but I have a Deadpool figure. Like, he's fun, but he's fun in doses. And so a lot of the times, both of these films, the previous two, I watched, loved them in the moment, but I don't, like I do with a lot of my other superhero films, I don't typically revisit because sometimes the comedy has sort of, if you see it once, it doesn't hold up as well the second time. And that's what these are first. Before they're an action film, they are a comedy. And so that it's not coming to America comedy, but it's comedy that, like, I don't typically go back to. That's it with this one. That's sort of where this is too. I love it. I liked it in the moment. I enjoyed it. But it's one like cotton candy where you sort of enjoy it in that moment and you sort of kind of forget about it after you leave. But the moments when I was there, it hit all the right nostalgia pieces. Story wise, I think what's cool about these Deadpool movies, one was a romantic comedy, one R-rated romantic comedy, one's a family R-rated comedy. This one's a buddy cop, if you will, comedy. And they all are slightly different and they work in those respects. I think for me, this movie works the best when we slow down a little bit from the comedy and start having those heartfelt moments. And it happens in here. A lot of that helped on Hugh Jackman. Wolverine has those sort of like super, super heartfelt moments. And when it gets that, I'm like, oh, it makes all this other wacky stuff that's happening around it work better. And that's why for me, this works when it gets to those points. It's fun. It's a little member berryish and we go in that nostalgia place, but at the heart of it, in addition to being a buddy comedy, it is a sort of a love letter to the Fox era of Marvel, which is sort of a cool thing to sort of have. It doesn't move the needle or adjust or continue on whatever. Yes, it plays in the sandbox of the multiverse, but it doesn't move it to whatever the next story is sort of be. It sort of sits in its own thing, which is kind of cool. We don't get too many of those anymore. So all in all, I appreciate it. I loved seeing Hugh in the yellow spandex and Wolverine and Deadpool to sort of comic covers, splash pages, use whatever they can throw at it, they do in here. And it's a fun ride that I think if you haven't seen, you should do so quickly because Marvel is already spoiling it for everyone.
Yeah, it's a very interesting strategy to, in week 2, be like, great, everybody who cared about spoilers saw it. And our next TV spot will just be like, here they all are.
Here they are.
I don't know if it's effective or not effective. I don't have those numbers. I don't even know if that data is available in any way, but it is fascinating. It's like in the second week of Endgame where they were like, hey, he picks that hammer up. If you were on the fence, he picks up that hammer.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's funny thinking about the history of even the Deadpool movies and character as far back as X-Men Origins, and this just like demand for this movie for so long, and then finally getting the story everyone knows. The footage is leaked, everyone goes ballistic. We're gonna do it. It becomes the highest R-rated opening, maybe movie of all time. And then we got Deadpool 2 around the time of Infinity War, and then Fox gets shut down. And it's always had this weird question mark and this weird kind of like, well, now what? And how are we gonna, is it gonna fit? And is it gonna do this? And I think the answer is kind of unanimously like, it'll always be fine because of the box office. It'll keep making its money.
Right.
And clearly they'll keep letting them do their thing with it. But you're right. We don't really do a lot of the traditional MCU setup. What's coming next? I guess we do in the sense of like, oh, here's this spoilers, I guess, this shot of him and Thor together. But I don't, that could just be a bit of like, and we do a lot of positing of multiverse stuff. And in a weird way, in the middle of the multiverse happening, it sort of to me is kind of how I want them to do it. I don't need us constantly weaving in and out. I sort of like the idea of being like, well, here's a Deadpool universe, and we now know Fantastic Four First Steps is going to be over here in its 60s future universe. And I think really we should have probably been doing that for a while and then done the mix instead of, instead of kind of like the Loki of it. And even, I don't want to pick on No Way Home because it's perfect, but even having them kind of like come in and out, a part of me is like, oh, it would have almost been cool to have like, here's what Sony's universe is kind of up to, and here's what this one's up to in this one. And you're right. Like once we slow it down, that's where all this is, because we have Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, who are both great actors. Correct. So of course we're going to use that. And I think we saw both of their strengths really well, because we kind of got to see Ryan Reynolds continuously show his comedy chops and his timing and his repartee with everybody, from even the opening and the like, hey, what are we going to do with Logan? We're going to go crazy with it. And then kind of on the other end of it, you have Hugh Jackman, who's been playing this version of Wolverine for so long, and now playing a version of him that's so subtly different, that so subtly plays on that like regret and remorse that we always kind of see him carry, that he carries in Logan a lot of like, oh, I'm tired and what I've done and this and this. And in here, he plays it with such an apathy. And you get these moments of him being like, I just didn't want them to know that I cared. I didn't want them to know that it all mattered. And as a result of that, I broke everything. And watching him kind of have this humbleness and this, I don't know, almost refusal to the call the whole time. But then going ballistic. Like it's pretty wild how many movies we have with those claws, and only like 2 of them there's blood. Like it's
I didn't think about it until we got it in here, and it's so bloody. I'm like, yeah, he stabbed a lot of people, and we just maybe see like blood wounds on a shirt and maybe X2, and then that's sort of it. The rest of the time we don't see it.
Mystique kind of gets it, and then usually you just have the slash and they're down, and you don't really think about it. But like all of them would be very R-rated. Like I'm sure that the optic glass from Cyclops aren't just like, it cauterized me when I went down, and like, Storm's doing weather. Like it's a bloody time. But we do have that. I think where it didn't work for me was sort of ironically in its third act a little bit, where I got kind of like, okay, we are just going to do the like usual Marvel thing. We're going to go as big as we can. And then kind of wrap it up real quick. We saved the universe. He's here now. Bye.
It's funny because we sort of get a fourth wall break where he says, all right, we're bringing it home. And I was like, yeah, because you could have ended where we ended, like before when they got through the portal. I was like, okay, that could be the end. And then they were like, we're not done yet. We're coming through the home stretch. I'm like, oh, this is still going a while. And then you're right, it gets very large there. Very like, all right, we're going to watch people do the big thing that can take over the whole world. And I don't know if we necessarily need to do that. I was almost okay with just watching the 7,000 Deadpools show up and them just sort of go run through them and like, oh crap, they rehealed. And then Peter comes, and like that works in that world without having to get the bit of the big action piece that sort of has to happen. It works because they both self-sacrifice. I get that point, but I think you can do that a different way without having to go so large.
We also sort of do the like my X-Men Apocalypse, one of my many X-Men Apocalypse problems,
So
where
many.
we're just sort of like, we're gonna stand still and graphics are around us. Like it is a very like Cassandra's got her
It's
hands in it and they're all standing and doing the
a
I
lot
was like,
of
oh, we
those.
couldn't do like a cool big fight. Like we couldn't
Yeah,
get all these cameos.
a lot of those superheroes, not all of them, but a lot of them do that when they're like, all right, cool, there's the big light, and we're just gonna point and stick and just kind of like watch graphics happen around it, which is weird, is why I thought the action sequence that happened in the zone was better. Like we had everybody doing their action sequence, like, oh, that should be the finale. And even then, the funny finale with versus all the Deadpools, that works. Then actually end on standing around felt a little like, oh, that's a little taking the wind out of the sails. Like we had two really good climactic action beats to sort of have, and then this is where we end on.
And
That's a
then
choice.
it's very Guardians 1 to me too, where we just sort of like we did it, and then there's
That
like
is thank you. Yes,
awesome.
that is
Yeah, like
exactly what that is. Yeah.
we don't really have an emotional catharsis outside of like seeing them all sit together at the table,
Mhm.
which is nice, but it kind of posits more questions than it answers because
Yeah,
we're
because we
already in the X-Men timeline, which is nonsense.
right. It's
Um,
that was already crazy. Yeah.
and so now a part of me is like, okay, so wait, Logan, I think we know is in like 2020 something.
Hmm.
So does that mean that like Deadpool 1 and 2 are after that? Or does he only know that like that Wolverine dies because the TVA told him? And now there's like two
Right.
Wolverines in that world?
Yeah.
I don't, and these are
I
like
don't
my
know.
dumb sci-fi questions that it's like really we should all just remember Basil Exposition and Austin Powers and the like, I suggest you don't worry about this sort of
Yeah.
thing and just enjoy
That's literally
yourself.
what it is. Because like when Laura X-23 shows up at the end at the round the table and Wolverine, I was like, okay, so none of the time, so we're now taking people out of the zone, off of pruning. Okay, cool. What does this mean?
And
And
we
then I
didn't
was like, you
take
know what?
Electra or
Fuck it.
Blade.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the coolest moments for me, like I said, is when that Laura Logan sit down is very heartfelt. And I was like, okay. Um, and the reasoning why he's wearing this suit, all of that, like this movie is written very well. And so when it has those moments to sort of breathe, it nailed it. I was like, oh, you've given these characters some catharsis as to why they are in this scenario. And like for me, I was having a hard time accepting Deadpool's separation from Vanessa. Like
Again, I
it
also
just
had that where I was like, we keep doing
right. I
this.
was like, this doesn't make sense. Like
Just have them be
you
together.
right, like you went out of your way to jack up the timeline, um, to get her back. Then you just be together. Like I don't know why outside of hey, this particular script doesn't really need the Deadpool characters so much, and we want to go for Wolverine. That's the only reason it sort of read to me because his love was her and that they belonged together. And so lose and the entire second movie was about how his life was completely shit if she was gone. So then you have her back and you push her away, doesn't register as making a lot of sense to me.
Especially when the stakes are high enough with just like, you're going to lose all these people.
Yeah.
I was sort of like, that's enough. I don't also need him broken up with her.
Right.
And I think
Yeah,
the
like
only real reason that's there is so Wolverine can be like, you couldn't even keep this relationship. Like that, it's
right.
only really there for people to shit on him
Yeah,
about it.
like you can keep right. That's what I say. You can keep him in that relationship and them together, and then still have him being, I need to get back to them. And actually, it makes the impetus even more, because it's like I need to get back to them and the person that I love. So it's just that's just an odd choice, but everything else kind of worked for me.
Oh, the highs of the movie are high. Every
Yeah,
fight scene is incredible. Every
yeah.
cameo is awesome. And I love that they really weren't even just like cameos to be cameos. I liked the idea of this rebellion against Cassandra, and I liked the idea of we all want an ending.
Hmm.
And I mean, we'll do our full spoilers, but giving Elektra another shot was awesome.
And her getting a beat, like a joke at the expense of Daredevil
Was
fucking
great.
chef's kiss.
Blade, of course, was
Blew my mind.
awesome.
Blew my mind. Our audience
Yep.
lost it. For multiple reasons. But one, because we got to see fucking Wesley as Blade again. But two, there was some history between Ryan and Wesley that we didn't think this was possible.
And some future stuff. I loved that. Only one Blade.
Yeah.
Only ever gonna be one Blade. I was like, that's great. And
um,
then I mean the gambit of it all, the
yeah,
Channing
Channing,
Tatum
he finally
gambit.
got his moment. Yeah, he finally got his moment. And whatever the hell he was doing with that dialect was amazing.
And I love like a part of me was like, man, was this really how he was gonna do it? I was like, no, it definitely isn't. We're doing all of this to just be a beat.
Yeah.
And even just his small laughs, like, well, yeah, some of us got to save the world, but maybe some of us never even got this shot. Maybe I was just born here. I don't even know. Like, just kind of having these like weird despondent moments of him, like, and it is
Yeah.
fun to see Marvel, Fox, and these actors all be able to poke at themselves. Like all the
Yes.
moments where Deadpool is like, it's not working. This isn't working. Oh,
Yeah. Like
you're
even
coming in
all the
at a low
misses.
point,
Yeah.
Logan.
Yeah. All the
Um,
misses we've had since then.
yeah,
Um,
so that all worked. And I think when you get into the like, well, why are we even doing this? Because I do feel like with this one specifically, we're not really tackling new themes, but you're right. We are in a new genre. And I like that we kept that structure. We
mhm.
still have the like, he's on a mission, he interrupts the mission. You're probably wondering this. Well, this is this type of movie, and here's what we're going to go do. Uh, so I really enjoy that. Um, and it is a great send off. And I think we've now had so many multiverse examples and so much cameo nostalgia moments between this and DC and X-Men and Spider-Verse, and it's over here and over there. To see all these different ways now where you have it in Spider-Man where it really pushes the story and you still
Mhm.
get your big surprising people, but it's like, well, this is really what we're doing and we're driving it home that way. And then you have kind of the Doctor Strange of it where it's like, here's a lot of fun sort of cameos, but they're just like very different versions of characters, and we're going to kill them all off and go on our way.
Right.
I love it. I know it didn't work for everybody. I love it.
I love. Yeah. I enjoy multiverse quite a bit actually.
And then you've got like in both of DC, I don't know if you've seen any of the Crisis on Infinite Earth
Mhm.
trilogy animated shows. That's such an interesting example of like doing it really well and not at the same time and getting
Right.
these glimpses of like the final performance for Kevin Conroy, but then you're also just having these overloaded scenes of like,
Yeah.
and you're like, what's going
There's
on?
so much happening. Yeah.
And then like the Flash kind of has a similar, oh, at the end, we're just going to show you,
Just this is all the worlds that sort of
isn't
existed.
this fun?
Yeah.
And I think this falls in where everyone kind of wanted the Flash to be, because it would have been
Hmm.
Johnny Storm's cameo was a little like, isn't this fun? And then we ripped him apart,
Yeah.
which was awesome.
Which is great.
Like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, but I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, if every cameo had just been this, like, hey, remember Elektra? She's dead now.
Hmm.
Like, I know a lot of speculation was, is it going to be Deadpool kills the Marvel universe? And while those comics are always fun, they're also always a little like, okay, he did
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So it's like it would have been cool to watch him like fight and kill Daredevil or fight and kill Elektra or Bullseye or everybody.
Hmm.
But at a certain point, it really would have just been like, great, we're playing Mortal
This is
Kombat,
just
but we know he wins.
yeah, like he's just going through the different skins of everybody, and yeah, and at least the way that they did it put a structure on it. Like these guys have sort of, and it also plays with the real world where Fox doesn't exist anymore. So these folks have all sort of become the bygones or the forgotten versions of these heroes and sort of exist in this nebulous world. And they have one last hurrah on them. And it's cool. It's weird because technically Blade's not in the Fox, but he get thrown in the mix
Yeah,
of
I
it
was
too.
like, that was it wasn't
He's
Sony.
New Line
It was New
Cinema.
Line.
Yeah. But he's sort of the grandfather of it all, so it's like he should be there as well.
Yeah, I guess the only one we don't get anything from is like Ang Lee's Hulk or any Spider-Man movies. But
Yeah.
otherwise, this really was like the start of
I think
everything.
it's also important to note like that they don't have any of the X-Men in it. I think that's purposely done. I feel like we're going to probably put them on the board. They want them to put them on the board in a different way. And so they know none of the X-Men show up, which is interesting. I don't,
I really thought we were going to get Jean and the Phoenix. I really was like, oh,
yeah,
we're going to fight Cassandra and Wolverine doesn't want to play. There's going to be a Jean here. And the way they're going to fight the telekinetic is with another telekinetic.
I just think it's interesting because we've seen a beast. Like we know that there's a beast in here, and like we know that we're going in that direction based off of what happens at the end of the Marvels. Well, possibly, who knows right now with the MCU, but that's sort of where that it seemed like things were going, and so it's just to not have them brought up at all was an interesting choice. But I think that's deliberate. But we have enough. There's enough here that satiates the wants and
Yeah.
needs, and you still get a beautiful sort of send off at the end
Oh,
during
I
the credits.
mean, we Seinfeld it. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I guess for people who don't know or didn't watch Seinfeld, the finale of Seinfeld ends with a giant sizzle reel to Time of Your Life by Green Day. And this does the same thing, which a part of
yeah,
me was like, all right, fair enough. And it almost kind of works in a weird meta, like Deadpool way of like, we're going to do what they did. But seeing all of that was phenomenal. Getting just these like fun moments of watching it, a young Hugh Jackman, a young Wade Wilson, all of the moment befores of everything, even the Fantastic Four movies, and having all of that
yeah.
there
Even Michael
was
B. Jordan even shows up in this Fantastic Four. I'm like, I guess sure, yeah, that's a part of this too, I guess.
a part of me was like, yeah, put them all in there. Like this is like
Yeah,
warts and all. This was like, I don't hate the first Fantastic Four movie.
I
I
don't
get
either.
it's very of its time,
Yeah,
but it is also like that and Blade are how we're here.
yeah.
And you can
Like
go
we,
further back to Lou Ferrigno, and you can go even further back to the black and white serials or the 89 Batman. But if we're talking the Iron Man upwards, you trace back to FF and Blade.
yeah. I think like Ryan put a post of there's a photo of them like Deadpool, like him, Hugh. It's when Channing Tatum was still about to be Gambit. Like they took around the time of like X Has Be Days of Future Past. And he's like, this movie is sort of a love letter to all of us. Michael B. Jordan was in the shot too, because they had that Fantastic Force happening as well. He's like, this is a love letter to all of them, warts and all. Like this literally birthed us, and we wouldn't be in this position without them. And so thank you, Fox, and thank you, MC Disney, for letting us play one last time in this sandbox, which is sort of what they did. And it's fun.
And it really does kind of make you want everybody back. Like it is very like Jamie Foxx's Electro, where you're like, oh my god, I want this Electro more, and I want Blade. I'm like, oh my god, like I didn't know that I wanted it so
it's
badly.
it's so funny because everybody knows that the Electra movie is terrible, but they all still love Jennifer Garner as Electra. Like she shows up and like, oh god, Electra. And while it is terrible, there are people in this world that look fondly on that movie. So each one of these films is somebody's favorite
Yeah,
film, and so to sort of get them back in there is it's a cool send off.
yeah, it's a very fun thing to do. I get cautious of overdoing it eventually, but because I am now like, okay, well we sort of said goodbye to Sony and No Way Home,
Mm-hmm.
and Sony's obviously still going.
Yeah.
Goodbye in air quotes. Um, I don't think we'll ever really do anything with the Ang Lee Hulk. That's probably just
Yeah.
there. But now we're saying goodbye to 20th Century. All that's kind of left is the MCU of these titans of the last
Yeah.
20 years. Like it is really funny. This was the first summer where a superhero movie didn't open the summer since the first X-Men movie.
Mm-hmm.
And to sort of have this not at the end of summer but close to the end of it is a
Yeah.
very like it's like George Lucas says, it's like poetry, it rhymes. And it's funny too, because obviously we're not done. We just had our X-Men 97 show. We
Yeah.
just saw all the new announcements at Comic-Con. Robert Downey Jr.'s back. We're going to keep
Mm-hmm.
going. But I think that's why I appreciate that this felt like an ending. Despite the stuff in the end that didn't work, it ended. And I
Right.
think that's something I more and more miss in movies and franchises. I miss when at the Return of the Jedi, I was like, that's it. We're done.
That's the end.
We
Right.
finished this story.
Mm-hmm.
I miss at the end of Endgame where I was like, and we finished that story. I miss more and
Correct.
more where I feel like, oh, we walked away. Like even calling things like The Last Stand or The Last Crusade, I was like, yeah, great, we're done. And I know that the corporate side of the world will never, we're
No.
not doing that
We're
anymore.
always going to keep that door open. Yeah.
But it's sort of nice. Like that's kind of how I always do it, where I'm like, well, that's my ending. Like we can do all of this and keep going, but
Yeah.
that's the end of this story for me.
Right.
And then I'll watch the rest and enjoy them.
Yeah, and this movie ends essentially with them like around and like if they wanted, sure they could go back to it. But if this ended, if this is the last time and it won't be, but if this is the last time that we saw Deadpool and Wolverine, I'd be okay. Like it ends in a way they're like, yeah, that's fine, cool. These two ride off into the sunset. In this universe, this world, they're just having fun and they're a family together now. We
But of
know
course,
that box office lost its mind, so those two are going to be doing this till the fucking cows come home. Yeah.
yeah, the sixth highest opening, I think, of all time, and the beating
Already.
itself.
Yeah, it's right. It's self-eating now. 205
Yep.
domestic, like 438 world. For an R-rated
Just
movie,
like
that's
Deadpool to
insanity.
beat himself off and get to the top again. Um, yeah, fascinating that the highest R-rated is now beat by the third installment of that highest R-rated franchise. Which is
But I
also
do,
interesting. It proves too that there's a superhero R-rated audience
yep,
that
that's what I was about to say. I was like, it
lap it on
proves
Blade.
that Disney is like, all right, well, maybe we can go ahead and put this right on Blade. We can give them an R-rated film, and now we can play a little bit more in this wheelhouse. Maybe we can go ahead and do our Punisher. Maybe we can go ahead and play in these worlds and give them that option. We don't have to be everything does not have to be family oriented. And I think we're going to get that a little bit with the retooling of
Daredevil
Daredevil. Yeah, what they did
and
with
Echo
Daredevil.
was under that
Yeah,
new the
yeah,
Marvel Knights label, and
yeah,
so like we're tiptoeing in, but now we have a big budget that did
right.
it.
Yeah.
And it is interesting right now when you look at the state of the MCU, which I've enjoyed, and now is kind of like who knows with Kang
Yeah,
and
I was having a
Doom.
good time, but now I'm not.
Um,
Yeah, we'll see.
but we only know about what, 6 movies in the next two or
Yeah,
three,
and three
four
of them are next
years.
year. So it's literally the next three, and then we know about Fantastic Four, and that's kind of what we got.
And I don't even know what the shows are. I mean, X-Men's getting a new season.
Yeah. We got Agatha coming out. We
Agatha.
got Daredevil, and then somewhere in there, there's the Ironheart is done. They're going to release it when it comes out. Who knows? But that's sort of the end of what is on. Actually, there's one that they did that's sort of an offshoot. I forgot what it was called. But yeah, for the most part,
Wonder Man's been announced,
yes,
but
that's the
who even
one. Yeah.
knows? Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they filmed it or are filming it, but I don't know where that also fits into anything. But outside of that, there's no real concrete shows. And all three of those shows, I mean, Ironheart, I guess, is a part of the film world, but like they're kind of offshoots. They don't really have anything to do with the main story, whatever
No,
that is now.
I think it finally kind of feels after phase 4 and phase 5 that we're actually like hitting not the reset button, but a reset button. Like we are
Mm-hmm.
kind of about to be like, Caps gets his movie, and then Thunderbolts, and
Mm.
then Blade, and then the two Avengers and the FF. And part of me is like, this feels like the post Endgame
Yeah.
buildup.
Yeah.
And everything else, like we talked about in our earlier podcast, felt like a send off
Mm-hmm.
to whoever it was. And now we've sent off an entire studio. And part of me is like, okay, great. So now it's time to bring it all back up. And we
Yeah.
showed you all, like, it'll probably in a weird way retroactively work, where we'll be like, okay, there's going to be some movies that address how chaotic everything is. And
Yeah.
eventually it'll be like, and we're back. And we'll be like, yeah, remember when we had all that chaos for a reason?
Right.
Um, yeah, it was all great. It was a very fun ride. I always like all the points. It's fun having a character in the movie who can point out the Easter eggs to you. And then
Yeah.
you don't need 40 YouTube videos with very big yellow circles around where they are. Um, that was good. But that is our show, folks. We will see you guys next time. As always, you can follow it at Hollywood ADI on Twitter. Hollywood already did it on TikTok. Terrence is at Terrence Tatum. I'm at As Always Blake. Terrence also does our YouTube show. Hollywood already did it with the TV reviews and trailer reactions and all that good stuff. So find us over there too and subscribe. And we will see you all later.
Later.